us. Let's turn now to one of those people that I just heard, they have to be there until Christmas Eve. He's Congressman Bryan Steil, Republican of Wisconsin. So, Congressman, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to have you with us from Capitol Hill. So what is your take right now on this funding the government issue? Omnibus, is there any realistic prospect for that? And is that better governance if you can get it done?
We should not be here in the first place, and we're looking at two bad options in front of us. Nothing moves Congress like a deadline, but there's no deadline like Christmas Eve. And so I'm concerned we're going to see another 1 week short-term kick the can down the road. One of my big fears is a giant lame duck omnibus with big spending numbers coming forward. That's exactly the opposite of what we need to get this economy back on track.
So, Congressman, take us into that, a little bit of the weeds here. As I understand it, there's a difference, surprise, surprise, between Republicans and Democrats. Republicans want more spending for defense. They don't want to increase some of the discretionary because they say that's already done in the Inflation Reduction Act. On the other hand, the Democrats say, let's increase it on both sides. Is that the basic issue?
That's one of the two big issues. The other is, I think everyone knows, Republicans' hands are going to improve dramatically come January 3rd when Republicans take away the Speaker's gavel from Nancy Pelosi in the House of Representatives. And so I think we really need to control this discretionary spending. We need to make sure we are strengthening our military, but the negotiations in front of us change dramatically, not only with a Christmas deadline, but the potential to really change the negotiations come January 3rd when Republicans are in control in the House.
Another issue you know very well, Congressman, is the Defense Authorization Act. Is that on a different track? Do you need to get that done before the end of the year?
I would really like to see us get that done before the end of the year. It's so important that we make sure our military is in a position of strength. We continue to see a whole host of global challenges from Russia to Iran to communist China. And so getting the NDAA across the line, that's historically one of the few bipartisan bills that gets done every year. I'd like to see us get that done as well.
Congressman, you said there'll be a dramatic change with the new Congress because Republicans will have a majority. Maybe not quite as dramatic as a lot of Republicans thought it was going to be because it's going to be a pretty narrow majority. Give us your sense right now on the leadership race. We know Kevin McCarthy really would like it badly. It was thought that maybe it was pretty likely that would happen. Now we've seen some challengers to him.
Yeah, I think ultimately at the end of the day on January 3rd, Kevin McCarthy is going to have the votes and will become Speaker of the House. This is a long family car trip that we're having right now. There's going to be some tough conversations in that start of that car trip. But I think by the time we get to January 3rd on the floor of the House, Kevin McCarthy will have the votes to be Speaker.
How much fun will that job be? I mean, it's a practical matter, given the very narrow majority. I mean, the Democratic caucus has shown it can be fractious. I think the Republican one can be as well, can it not?
Yeah, well, imagine bringing 221 of your relatives over to Thanksgiving for a giant dinner. That's kind of what it's like. Ultimately, though, I think we know we have the opportunity to really make progress for the American people. We can put a check on the Biden administration because we're going to have the gavels, and we can provide oversight and accountability that we haven't seen in the last 2 years. It's important that we come together so we can get on with the work of the American people.
Is that the goal at this point of the Republicans, as someone who actually is close to Kevin McCarthy, the oversight and accountability, a lot of investigations, rather than actually getting legislation done?
Well, I'd like to see us get legislation done, but the low-hanging fruit is to provide accountability for the American people. Think just in the Financial Services Committee on which I sit, which oversees the Security and Exchange Commission, Chairman Gensler has come before the committee 0 times in the last 2 years. That's going to change. We need to provide accountability. We need to provide oversight on behalf of the American people of the entire federal government.
So let's talk about your particular role. Kevin McCarthy, I saw in a tweet, says that you're one of the 4 people leading a transition, and it is basically on dealing with the House of Representatives and protecting the House of Representatives, which we saw attacked on January 6th. What are you looking at as part of that transition?
I think one of the most important things is one of your 5 rights under the First Amendment, that you have the right to petition your government for grievances. On the House side of the Capitol, the House has remained not fully open for over 2 years now. It's time we rip off the Band-Aid off these COVID-era policies and we allow everything to get back so that you can come and visit your member of Congress, share your opinion, come for a tour of the United States Capitol. We're done with the COVID-era policies. People want to see us get back to normal, and that's what I'm working on.
Do we have the security systems and personnel in place to protect people from something like January 6th? None of us want to see that happen again, I dare say.
No, absolutely. We need to make sure that we keep the campus secure and safe. We can do that. I've been told that all of those policies will be in place. We don't need to alter the security situation, but what we do need to do is make the campus open and accessible. I'm confident that we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Do you need more funding? Do you need more personnel in the Capitol Police? Do you have what you need to keep it safe?
When I've talking to Capitol Police leadership, I do believe in large part we have the funding that we need. Now we need the leadership to be able to actually secure the campus. But those are questions that are ongoing as situations change here on Capitol Hill. But we do need to make sure we keep the place safe. But we also have to make it open and available to the American public. Again, I'm confident that we can do both.
So looking forward to the next 2 years, however it plays out, what is the main thing you want to get accomplished as a Republican?
Yeah, I think really we got to get our federal spending in place. We continue to watch the Fed come in with a blunt object to try to slow the economy. Why? Because Congress has wildly overspent over the last 2 years. Getting our spending on a sustainable path so we can actually get ourselves back to normal, I think, is job number one. And if we do that correctly, we'll be successful in bringing inflation down.
As you know, Congressman, so well, in managing any kind of budget, whether it's a private budget or public budget, there are two factors. One is the expenses. You just talked about the spending. The other is the revenue. What about actually making a balance of the two? I must say, when I manage budgets in private sector, I would always say it's got to be both. You can't just do one or the other.
Well, that's why pro-growth policies are going to be so absolutely critical. As we look out, we have a whole host of tax cuts that have been put in place that are generating significant economic growth. We need to make sure that those cuts are made permanent to continue the robust growth we saw prior to the pandemic. We need to unleash American energy. We need to right-size our labor policies so that more people come off the sidelines and return back to work. If we're putting forward pro-growth policies, we're going to see revenue increase without having to raise rates.
So, Congressman, finally, this is a very large and complicated economy, a large and complicated budget. Is there nowhere that tax increases might not make sense? I mean, going back to Ronald Reagan, he did have effective tax increases in some of the usage taxes, right?
Well, I think what's key here is that we don't see a net tax increase. There could be some tweaks, some trade-offs in these conversations, but I don't think that this is a period of time where we need to raise taxes on the whole. I think what we need to get on with the work of is putting forward pro-growth policies that actually grow the economy, and in doing that will generate revenue rather than, again, raising taxes.
Congressman, really great to have you with us again. Thank you so much for your time. That's Congressman Bryan Steil, Republican of Wisconsin.